working in the favor of Tesla. Just deleted my number there. Working in the favor of Tesla this quarter for operating expenses is CEO compensation. It's kind of working in favor, kind of not, depends on your compare, but here I have $158 million in CEO compensation. There's only about $300 million or so left on Elon's compensation plan. And if we look at the historicals here, you can see that that's only basically a quarter for what Tesla's kind of been recognizing. So we're getting really close to being down there. This quarter I'm projecting $158 million. I'm expecting them to hit their next Ebitda milestone and recognize catch-up contributions of that of like $120 million, and then about 60% of the $55 million that's remaining to be recognized for achievements probable or being achieved. So anyway, too much detail there, but $158 million is where I'm at versus Q3 $190 million. So you get some benefits operating expenses from a lower CEO compensation number. And then as we continue, after this, there's only going to be $150 million left. So if you spread that out over the next 4 quarters for 2022, on average, it's only going to be $30 million a quarter or something like that, $35 million or so. So this is dropping quick. Hopefully we'll get a new CEO compensation plan, and those will go back up with time and more good stock performance. Definitely worth the cost, but it was outsized for the last 12 months, and that's going to start to be the opposite of outsized, I guess, as we head into 2022. So anyway, that's a factor in my SG&A. If we look at, I already mentioned the no Bitcoin impairment. If we look at stock-based compensation excluding CEO compensation, so this gets rolled into it, you can see I'm at $300 million. That would actually be up 5% quarter over quarter, so showing kind of a steady increase there. That's for all the other employees. And then SG&A excluding stock-based compensation, so just the remainder of this 1,003 minus this 458. For that, I've got $545 million versus $519 million in Q3, so again, up 5%. So even though it looks like operating expenses are declining, it's just a factor of the Bitcoin impairment and the CEO compensation, which both make sense. So with that, after subtracting operating expenses from operating income, or from after subtracting operating expenses from gross profit, that leaves me with operating income of $361 million. Scratch that number, $3.163 billion. So almost $3.2 billion in operating income versus the street average of about $2.8 billion. So you can see that my forecast here is up a couple percentage points, or 210 basis points from what the street is expecting. I'm at an 18.3% operating margin versus the street at 16.2, or median 16.5. That's huge. I mean, we've seen this over the last few quarters: 11%, 14.6%, 18.3%. Here's what I'm forecasting. That's tremendous. Most operating margins for other automakers are in that 5 to 10% range. Tesla is already, far surpassing that, and this continues to grow. And Zach Rucorn on the last call, though he did express that there's going to be some uncertainty and maybe volatility in that number, he does continue to expect that to grow as well. So that's where I'm at for this quarter. So getting into the bottom line stuff here. I'm just going to hide this first couple of boxes. So Ebitda, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, I'm actually at $4.4 billion. I mean, if you looked at last year, they were at 1.9, and that was pretty solid for that period of time. Like, we were very excited about that number last year. Already now up to 4.4 earnings before those other factors. So huge number here. Obviously, that annualizes to more than, well, I guess we're close to 10 billion. I know that's like the easiest math ever. So annualizes to 17.6 billion if Tesla can continue that Ebitda rate. As for net income, I know what I was thinking. I was thinking 10 billion because if you look ahead to GAAP net income, I'm at $2.6 billion for GAAP net income, up from 270 million last year. So adding $2.2 billion over the course of 1 year to their GAAP net income. Tremendous progress there on earnings. So what I was thinking there is that 2.6 billion, that's obviously annualizes to over $10 billion per year in annualized GAAP net income run rate. And again, that's including outsized CEO compensation at this point in time. So non-GAAP net income, that's just adding back stock-based compensation. I'm at about 3.1 billion there. Getting back to the comparison, I am showing about $300 million higher here, so about a 16% beat on GAAP net income from the street consensus. And then earnings per share, the number that everyone likes to look at, that is also overrated. On a non-GAAP basis, I'm at $2.68 versus the street at $2.46. And then on a GAAP basis, which is the number that's going to go into the price to earnings ratio you see on Google Finance or Yahoo Finance, I'm at $2.28 on a GAAP basis. Free cash flow, I haven't estimated. Haven't been doing that the last few quarters just because there's a lot of volatility there and kind of just depends what Tesla does with CapEx. But the street is expecting somewhere between 1.6 to 1.9 billion in free cash flow, which would grow Tesla's cash balance to potentially 18 billion or so in that range, even before factoring in Bitcoin. So very excited to see the strength in Tesla's business. We're going to see a lot of that show through this quarter, hopefully, and definitely excited for that. We'll come back to that deferred tax allowance, but let me just hit the notes for this income lines. So with this $2.28 forecast on a GAAP basis, if we look over the last 4 quarters, then I've got $5.13 in GAAP earnings, and that's going to be up from when it replaces last year's Q4, which was only 24 cents. Right now we're at trailing 12 months, $3.09, and after this report, if my number's on, it's going to go to $5.13. So you can just see how fast this is increasing and how quickly that's going to be dropping Tesla's price to earnings multiple. Just what we've been talking about for, I guess, the last forever. But that's going to continue then in Q1. As you can see here, the last year Q1 number is also quite small. So, if you get another $2 in earnings for Q1, this next quarter, that's already going to be, almost $7 in earnings per share, which, it's growing quickly. So, looking at that $5.13 number, just to give some context, I did this a little bit earlier when I was hoping the share price might close up at $9.50 for today. I think we're closer to $9.20 now, but at a share price of $9.50, the earnings that I have in here, that would be a price to earnings multiple of 175 times, and the forecasted Q4 earnings that I have here, if you just annualize that comes out to $9.12, which, we might see this drop for a couple of quarters as Tesla's ramping up, but those are, fundamentally short-term issues. This shows the strength of Tesla's business at its current scale, and it's only going to grow as that scale grows, even if there is a short period of time here where earnings or net income drops due to ramping up costs. Doesn't matter, it's short-term. Tesla will get through it, it'll get ramped. Then they'll come back to this fundamental structure, plus the strength of the new business lines from Texas and Berlin. So I still think it's interesting to look at this annualized, even if we do have a short-term drop in that number. Don't necessarily expect that, but if we did. Anyway, point here being that at $9.12, that annualized number, that would put the price to earnings at 104 times. And hopefully throughout 2022 we see this number increase again pretty significantly, like we've been seeing. So bottom line there, multiple compression continues. And the bonus there, so just as I said last quarter, Model S and X still not fully ramped. I think I have them at like a 19% gross margin for this quarter. Once they're fully ramped, they're going to double the revenue that they're contributing, and probably triple the profit that they're contributing. Just super rough mental math there. But really, they're sort of neutral impact to the business right now. Once that's fully ramped up, that's going to be a strong positive. Fsd, not fully recognized. I still don't expect that this quarter. I think Tesla will wait until we continue to see a Firmware release, hopefully version 11. Maybe we see that in Q1. It'd be a great offset for some of these, ramping up costs that we're talking about for Berlin and Texas, which, again, just a twinkle in the spreadsheet's eye. One thing here, so I do have the FactSet number, so FactSet's a little bit lower, they're at 239, but I did see an article that said that the whisper number, so whisper number, basically like what the street's talking about in terms of true expectations, which might vary from what we're seeing in the spreadsheets because some of these spreadsheets might not be updated, or averages and medians. Those are going to include numbers from people that have $250 price targets. So maybe those aren't necessarily good to use in terms of what the actual true expectations are. So the whisper number, that's more of, what people think the true expectations are. It's not an official number, but I did see an article that said that was $2.71. So I would actually be slightly below that whisper number. And I do think that's pretty reasonable, because I think if you go through here, a lot of what I'm doing would probably match pretty closely to what the street's expecting. So yeah, it's just kind of a call out of, hey, if Tesla comes in and reports $2.68 and the stock goes down, and you're kind of confused about, hey, they just beat earnings by 10% or whatever, that's kind of what happens sometimes. So just something to be aware of. Again, I think if we go back to the average selling price and the cost of goods sold, that's the biggest area of uncertainty for me. That could drive these numbers pretty significantly in either direction. Hopefully the operating expenses come in as expected, but small changes up top can start to really drive pretty significant changes down here on the bottom. Another thing to keep in mind, just in terms of reaction, and as I said at the beginning, mindset for what we're even talking about these numbers for, to understand what's going to happen going forward. The other big focus is guidance, right? And Tesla's pretty vague on their guidance in general. We have kind of that 50% growth rate, long-term target. Tesla doesn't guide for earnings or anything like that. And then of course we've got the product roadmap update, which we've talked a little bit about. Don't want to focus too much on that, but my hope would be that Tesla talks about how they're going to handle the introduction of the 4680 battery cells, because either way, you're going to have a lighter vehicle with the same specs, so it's going to be superior. You're going to have a lot lower cost of goods sold once it's ramped up, or maybe Tesla could offer, use that extra space and weight savings and increased energy density to create a different tier of product line for the Model Y, maybe Performance Plus or something like that, Glad Model Y. I hope they kind of talk through the rollout plan for that. Obviously, we kind of expect them to talk about the Cybertruck and maybe finalize either a timeline expectation on that, or give us an update in terms of what the pricing might look like. I don't really expect that, but we know Elon is now talking about the quad motor, so we'll see on the Cybertruck. Semi, they'll probably talk about those deliveries to Pepsi and then just the ramp up throughout this year. Energy, I think there's a lot to talk about there. There's been some rumors about Megapack changes, so they may talk about that on that product roadmap update as well. And then I don't really expect them to talk about a cheaper Tesla. It just doesn't really make sense to me at this point in time, so I don't think they'll want to put too much emphasis on that. As for that guidance piece, I'm going to flip over to browser here, because I do just want to point out one thing. So this is the outlook that we had. This is last year's Q4 update letter. And you can see in the volume section, this is really all we got for guidance. Okay, we're planning to grow as quickly as possible, multi-year time horizon, 50% average annual growth rate, stuff that we've all talked about. But they did say in some years we may grow faster, which we expect to be the case in 2021. So this first part is long-term guidance, not necessarily any guidance for the individual year. But Tesla did say, hey, it's going to be above 50% this year, or at least that's their expectation. They did end up removing that statement in the Q3 letter. So this is last quarter's earnings, and you can see that that has disappeared. I looked back at Q1 and Q2, and that statement had been included, but then Tesla did decide to drop it off in Q3. Obviously, by then for 2021, that was kind of a foregone conclusion. But what I do kind of wonder, that opportunity to be even a little bit more vague and not create that expectation that when we come into the Q4 earnings report this time, that they're going to continue to say, okay, for 2022, yes, we expect this, or not. So this is one area I'm curious about when we get the report, is if Tesla does include, hey, 2022, we do expect to be one of those years, or if they just keep it vague, like they changed to in Q3, and say long-term 50%, and don't give us any clues on their expectations for 2022. So if they don't give us that, it might create a little bit of, not necessarily doubt, but I guess I don't really have a better way to put it, might create a little bit of doubt in terms of like what can be done this year, especially as we continue to wait for Berlin and Texas to, get started, which, by the way, I do expect an update on that, and hopefully the update for Austin is that they really have started production, and hopefully the Berlin update is that, hey, we're ready to go with pre-production and just waiting the final approval. Those would kind of be my two expectations on updates there. Okay, I think that is everything. I did see a couple of, I don't know if they were questions or just super chats, but I definitely appreciate those. Let me just take a quick look at that. I'll flip back here to Excel first. There we go. And I know that's a lot of numbers to go through, and we're going to have the actuals in a day, but again, this is like prerequisite work for me to understand the context, and then I might as well share that prerequisite work with you so that you also understand the context as we go into the report. And I think it's really good to think about some of these influencing factors like we talked about. Right, let me look through here. And I know for those of you that had asked a couple of questions on that last live stream, I know I said this at the end of yesterday's episode, but I do apologize that I missed some of those. I did go back and reply to any that I missed as a reply to the pinned comment on that episode from Friday. So if you had previously asked super chat question and I missed it, it's there. Just in case you didn't hear that update yesterday. And I'll try to not do that right now, but we'll see. Edward asking a really good question here. So why do you think earnings per share is overrated? Obviously earnings per share is important. I just think it's kind of like people look at quarterly reports and they judge the quality of earnings just based on what the bottom line number is. So let me give you a really simple example of that. If Tesla reported no regulatory credit revenue, it would cut out $275 million from their earnings, and that would change the bottom line earnings per share number significantly. Vice versa, if they reported $500 million in regulatory credit revenue, it would very easily lead to a beat, even if they miss in other areas. So the bottom line, the point of it about it being overrated is just that it doesn't really tell the full story. It doesn't tell the quality of earnings, and that's why I like to go through this sort of piece by piece. I would rather have Tesla report $2.60 with no regulatory credit revenue, but beat my gross margin expectation. Then I would take that option, and rather than them reporting $2.80, but they miss my gross margin expectation, and it's all driven by regulatory credit revenue. Regulatory credit revenue isn't going to scale to the degree that a strong gross margin number is going to be able to scale. That shows that Tesla's got extremely good cost structure on their entire business. A beat based on regulatory credit revenue, that's going to dissipate as soon as the next quarter. No one's going to forecast for that, and it just is ultimately not all that meaningful. Even though yes, Tesla gets the cash, they can still use it. It's just the quality of earnings is different, and that's why I say it's not like great to judge who did the best on forecasting earnings based on how close they were on earnings per share, or honestly even the top line is probably better than looking at that, just because there are so many things in here that we can't know that are going to influence that. So yeah, it's just sort of like false precision. Really good question though, thanks for asking that. David here asking, over 800% GAAP earnings growth, is that right? Can you talk about price to earnings growth ratio for a minute and explain it for people who are new to the concept? A couple of really good questions in there. So first off, yes, I believe that's right. So 862% net income growth, but that's because we had a really low basis last year. Tesla was kind of just flipping into profitability. Let me see if I think I've got some of the order quarters in here. Yeah. So you can see, Tesla was kind of just like plodding along here, not plodding along, they were still doing really good, but GAAP net income really hit that inflection point, and you kind of see, I believe this is probably like the Model Y launch sort of happening, and then certainly Shanghai ramping up too. So yes, up 800%, but you also can't just forecast that into the future. Price to earnings growth ratio, I don't think really makes sense for a company like Tesla right now. I know people like to look at that, but that uses this growth rate, and then it applies it to the price to earnings. I would have to look at the formula to figure out exactly what Tesla's PEG is right now, but it's not something I use just because the earnings per share growth rate is not super sustainable, obviously. But as Tesla starts to become bigger and we move further away from that inflection point of not profitable to profitable, then I do think it starts to have a little bit more merit. So, excuse me. I do think that in a few quarters from now, it'll probably start to make a little bit more sense to look at once we start comping off some of these post, I guess, inflection point type of periods. The second part of that was, PG. Okay, I got that. What are your expectations about Fsd beta user counts? Well, my expectations is that we won't know them. I don't know. Previously, I think I talked about this with Gally really recently. Previously, we had known the number was 11,000 from that NHTSA report. I think it's probably above 20,000 now, maybe 30,000, but that's just my best guess. Ultimately, not really all that important, I don't think, until Tesla decides to take that deferred revenue. The deferred revenue is significant. I think they're sitting on like 1.2 billion or something that they expect to recognize. If they recognize that, that could drive, again, just like what I was talking about with earnings per share. Tesla could come in and recognize a huge portion of deferred revenue, and this could be then like $3.50. Tesla could recognize a bunch of deferred revenue that would drive GAAP net income up, earnings per share up. But if that's a one-time thing, then it, fighting back against that with raising rates. Obviously, it's not going to be a super great environment, but I don't know. I think, the demographic that's buying Teslas, they're still going to have disposable income. They're still going to want to drive a Tesla. Demand will be lower, but I don't think it's going to be lower to a degree that it's going to do too much other than suppress Tesla's earnings power during that period of time. And this kind of goes back to like the whole debate that we've had in the past about like, oh, should Tesla advertise? Should they not advertise? People say no, they shouldn't advertise because they're production constrained. Another point of view would be that yes, you should advertise and then just raise prices, because ultimately you're going to get a stronger margin from making that combination of moves. And then people say no, Tesla shouldn't do that because it's not aligned with the mission statement. But Tesla's using that capital that they would gain to then build out more capacity, ramp up fast. I think it's justified, not necessarily. There's more to that, but the point is that over the last 12 months we've seen Tesla raise prices, and that is what they're doing right now. They're capturing stronger gross margins because of huge demand. So if you see demand decline a little bit, then Tesla's got flexibility, they can lower prices, but you're just not going to have that period of time where you've got as strong of gross margins potentially. So it's all related, and that's kind of what I'm talking about with like the China stuff, is that as Tesla's grown deliveries there, those are obviously happening at a lower average selling price because they have a standard range Model Y, North America doesn't. So it's kind of a perfect example of, if there were stronger demand in China, Tesla wouldn't have to sell the standard range Model Y. They'd have stronger revenues, they'd have higher gross margins. So if that opposite situation occurs where demand falls, Tesla introduces a standard range Model Y in the US, things come down. And then your growth outlook is not as strong for that period of time. So the macro is definitely still going to affect Tesla. I don't remember even what the start of that question was, but Trend says, nice job, Rob, really clear and concise this quarter. Thank you. I kind of thought so too. It's hit or miss with the live streams, right? Will stock price and Tesla earnings call be affected by the Fed announcement tomorrow? Yes, absolutely. Probably more so than Tesla earnings, honestly. I don't want to make any predictions on that piece of it, but I hope just having the Fed meeting over with and having some comments from them. A lot of times, knowing is, even if it's bad, is better than not knowing in the market, is kind of what I find. So hopefully getting through that will provide some stability, if nothing else. Alright, sweet. I think I finally got to the bottom here. But yeah, thank you guys. Those are really good questions. And hopefully this, again, helps level set just the mindset and understanding of the numbers that we get when we get them tomorrow. And of course, we'll have these up when we do get the actual numbers, compare where things were different, and that'll help us again understand, if I miss on revenue, it's probably average selling price, probably a bigger mix of standard range Model Ys, which would be less bullish for the outlook on 2022, I guess, in terms of margins. So this is going to have a pretty significant impact on how people look at Tesla over this next year. So it's important. It's a very important report, and a lot of the underlying factors here are going to, influence what smarter money is thinking about Tesla next year. Again, it's not as simple as just going to the bottom and looking at that earnings per share number and working from there. Sorry, one last super chat saw come in here. This will be the last one I take. Any insight into Fremont and Austin Y production with Tesla switch Fremont Y to standard range lithium iron phosphate? I think they can do that, if I remember correctly, like starting in April. I think that's when some of those patents expire for lithium iron phosphate. So yes, it wouldn't surprise me. And again, hopefully that's something that we hear Tesla talk about in this product roadmap update, is kind of like the strategy there. I don't know how open they'll be with that, but yeah, we'll see. Alright guys, that's going to wrap it up. I intended for this to be a shorter episode, but it was longer. But really good questions. Definitely don't mind having those conversations. If you haven't yet, hit that like button. I hate saying that, but I do appreciate the likes. It does help out, so.
On this week's episode of Ride the Lightning, the Tesla unofficial podcast, Tesla has released its latest quarterly vehicle safety report, and the numbers continue to trend in the desired direction. Plus, Canadian Tesla owners might have access to the Fsd beta soon. Tesla addresses a critical heat pump issue affecting octo-valve-enabled cars, and more. Here with you for episode 338 of Ride the Lightning, your weekly Tesla unofficial podcast for January 23rd of 2022. It's my left, Daisy the Boxer Puppy, on lookout, waiting for my wife to get home from a little evening out with a friend. So she's just keeping watch, and I am keeping watch over this week's Tesla news. As usual, there is plenty of it. I wanted to start the show by noting that yes, full self-driving is now officially $12,000 if you go for the lump sum version. And if you're curious, and by the way, don't take this as gospel just yet, given that it is only one person, but one Tesla owner posted on Twitter this week, this post kind of went viral, claiming that there was a $6,000 difference in trade-in value offered by Tesla on his two otherwise identical Model Ys, one with FSD, one without. So we'll see. I mean, if that's going to prove out accurate, then you know we've got it's a $6K trade-in value. You're getting about half of that from Tesla. Whether you agree or disagree with that is another matter, because there's certainly plenty of debate to be had over that. I mean, yes, it's a used car, but it's also software. There's sort of two sides to that discussion. But in any case, I also want to thank Mitch from Marin County, who calls in from time to time. He called in about this topic as well. Just wanted to shout him out as I'm mentioning this. Also, next week, next episode, number 339, will be the big Q4 earnings call recap and analysis episode. Those of you that have been listening for at least 3 months know that I do these with every Tesla earnings call, or really any big Tesla event. And so I'll tell you, I just submitted, before I sat down to record the podcast, I just submitted my 3 questions to say.com, which is where retail investors can go. I've got a few shares in a retirement account, nothing that I'm trading with. So I'm at least eligible to submit questions. We'll see if I'm voted enough to make it onto the call. I'm looking forward to that. All right, on with this week's news while we wait for the earnings call. Next week, Q4 of 2021. Tesla writes, Model S, Model X, and video that Elon gave actually holds. We'll keep an eye on this. Speaking of, of course, Elon, Drive Tesla Canada asked Elon about an issue that's been, unfortunately, very rapidly and seriously bubbling up in the community lately. And Drive Tesla Canada tweeted, "Can we please get an official comment about the heat pump issues? It is clearly impacting a lot of cars, and the fixes that the Tesla team, software and service, have tried so far haven't worked. Some clarity and transparency would go a long way with owners. Thanks." And Elon did respond to this, saying, quote, "Fixing this is a high priority. Firmware fix to recalibrate heat pump expansion valve is rolling out now." So if you're unaware of this, if you're not in a particularly cold weather region and or you don't have an octovalve enabled car, it seems that the octovalve has unfortunately been suffering from some serious issues in extreme cold. Now, the octovalve started going into the Model 3 and the Model Y a little over a year ago. So if, this is a big if, there ends up needing to be any sort of hardware recall or fix that needs to be done, a physical fix requiring an in-person visit from, this, meaning either you take your car to the service center or mobile service comes out to you, it is going to be a lot of cars. Basically, everything made last year or upwards of 1 million cars. It's going to be a lot. So I bring that up because NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, is now looking at this as well. This comes via Teslarati, who writes, "Recent complaints regarding Tesla's heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems have prompted the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration to discuss the feature with the automaker. Transport Canada, this past week, launched an assessment into the issues after 16 complaints on their side of the border. Meanwhile, Transport Canada opened an issue assessment investigation following those 16 complaints, who stated that their Tesla Model 3 and Model Y HVAC systems, including the heat pump, were not operating correctly in extreme cold weather. The agency told Teslarati that concerns were mostly related to a vehicle's potential difficulty with defogging and defrosting the windshield, which could affect driver visibility. The investigation is not a recall, according to the agency. And following reports that Transport Canada launched that, NHTSA has also launched a probe into the issues. NHTSA told Teslarati in a statement, quote, "NHTSA is aware of the issue and is continuing to gather information, discuss the issue with Tesla, and evaluate potential safety concerns." Well, hopefully firmware does the trick here, because it's just not going to be good for Tesla, but it's especially not going to be good for customers if this ends up needing to be a hardware fix or recall replacement of some kind. And by that I mean it's worse for customers, because that means if you're a customer, you're going to have to wait to get scheduled for service in the middle of winter as this issue rages on, and not everyone lives near a service center. The fact is, not everything can be fixed via an over-the-air software update. A lot of things can, that's the good news. So fingers crossed that maybe, just maybe, these firmware fixes that Tesla has been pushing will do the trick. Now, while we're on the subject of NHTSA, their safety advisor, Dr. Mary Missy Cummings, she goes by Missy, has been ordered to recuse herself from any matters relating to Tesla. Now, I haven't talked about this person on the podcast before because, quite frankly, I just don't like to get into the mudslinging and the sort of, the verbal, the back and forth that can go on online. I try to focus on the actual news, the concrete things that matter in the Tesla community that I think are most important for you to hear about. But this story now, this has, so I guess that is a preface to say, that is saying this is something that the community has been noticing and pointing out for a bit now. And now I'm bringing it up because NHTSA is doing something about it. This story comes via Drive Tesla Canada, another hat tip to them, who reports Cummings was appointed into the safety advisor role by the Biden administration last year after having worked as an engineer and computer science professor at Duke University's Humans and Autonomy Lab. Prior to the appointment, and here's where the Tesla part comes in, Cummings was a vocal critic of Tesla's approach to autonomy and full self-driving. She used to voice those concerns on Twitter, frequently bashing the company and its CEO Elon Musk, until deleting her account late last year. It gets better. Cummings was also serving on the board of directors and receiving a $400,000 salary from Veoneer, a company that specializes in developing and manufacturing, you guessed it, advanced driver assistance systems, aka ADAS, if you've seen the term. The company focused their efforts on, you guessed it again, LiDAR, a technology which Musk has said has no future in autonomous driving. That bias and perceived conflict of interest led to a petition on change.org asking for Cummings' appointment to be rescinded. Although it is unclear if the petition, which received tens of thousands of signatures, had any impact, a source familiar with the matter told the Wall Street Journal that the agency has ordered Dr. Cummings to recuse herself from any matters relating to Tesla. The private order was later confirmed by a U.S. Department of Transportation spokesperson. You have to hear these tweets, by the way. Just to, if you think like, because again, I admit, I am a Tesla fanboy. I try to keep it very down the middle as much as I can, but I'm an enthusiast. I wouldn't be doing a weekly Tesla podcast otherwise. But I'm also a journalist by a degree-holding, actively practicing journalist by trade, so I'm hardwired to try and, be fair. And so that's why I waited to report this to you, because, it was sort of, hearsay is not the right word, but anyway, now that NHTSA has actually taken action on this and decided that yes, Dr. Cummings does not belong in any Tesla matters as they pertain to NHTSA, that I think is extremely noteworthy. And again, just to drill down, just to really show you the bias here and the reason that Dr. Cummings was effectively verbally reprimanded here in order to recuse herself. The tweets are, of course, saved because you can delete tweets, but somebody's always going to screen grab them and they're never going to go away. We've got one from 2017 that Drive Tesla Canada has clipped out and pasted in their piece. One from 2019 and one from 2020. So this is a long-term deal for Dr. Cummings. So I guess let's just start in 2017, shall we? Obviously, long before she had anything to do with NHTSA. 2017, she quote tweets a Wired story, or I don't know. She just quote tweets somebody talking about self-driving, and she says, "It's hypocrisy run amok when Elon Musk calls for a ban on killer AI and robots, when his Tesla is the only AI-embedded car killing people." All right. Next tweet, 2019. "I have driven several Teslas. Autopilot easily causes mode confusion, is unreliable, and unsafe. NHTSA recalls should require Tesla to turn it off." Again, bear in mind that she's got a $400K per year payday from a LiDAR company. And then the final tweet here that's been excerpted by Drive Tesla Canada from 2020. Again, still preceding her NHTSA appointment. She says, LMAO, which most of you probably know what that's an abbreviation for. It's laughing my A off. "There is no way," in all caps, "Tesla will have a viable robo-taxi service this year." I guess she was right on that one. But "My lab has been running controlled experiments on Tesla Autopilot, and I can say with certainty that they are not even close to being ready. My student on this project should get hazardous duty pay." So again, and by the way, she was quote tweeting the Twitter account Tesla Charts, which is, if you're plugged into that world, and I don't advise it, the whole the Tesla Q community, which is the section of people online that are actively wanting and in some cases actively trying to drive the stock price down. Ultimately, their goal is to drive it to zero. Tesla Q indicates bankruptcy. Anyway, she's quote tweeting Tesla Charts, which is a notorious Tesla Q account. So it's just repeated examples over many years that this person has a clear and obvious bias against Tesla, and that's without the $400,000 salary from the LiDAR company. When you throw that into the mix, it's no wonder that she was asked to recuse herself on any matters pertaining to Tesla. And again, the tweets have been deleted, her account was been deleted, but the internet never forgets. So I think you can decide for yourself if those tweets sound like those of a fair and balanced person, which is what she's supposed to be in working for what is, I remind you, a non-partisan agency. So there you go. But I'll say good on NHTSA for doing the right thing here, because, again, the tweets speak for themselves. The ties to the LiDAR companies speak for themselves. Now, she is perfectly entitled to, as the kids say, secure the bag, but she can't do that at a LiDAR company and realistically appear to be impartial in her role in evaluating any matters pertaining to Tesla while at NHTSA. So glad to see NHTSA do that. Let's move on to happier topics, shall we? Next up this week, none other than Swedish supercar automaker Koenigsegg is making aftermarket parts for Teslas. Thank you to listener Nadav, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, for sending this in from Motor Trend. And Motor Trend writes, a new lineup of carbon fiber parts from Unplugged Performance bring more than an extra dash of splash. They're manufactured by none other than Koenigsegg. Yes, that Koenigsegg, the hypercar manufacturer behind crazed top speed runs and exotic internal combustion engine technologies. This collaboration between Unplugged Performance and Koenigsegg, dubbed Up times CAM, K-A-M, in reference to Koenigsegg Advanced Manufacturing, kicks off with carbon fiber spoilers for the Model 3, Model Y, Model S, and Model X, as well as wider front fenders and a high downforce spoiler for the Model 3 specifically. More parts are promised later this year. The regular spoilers for the Model 3 and Model Y, these are the Koenigsegg ones, run $1,745 a piece and are claimed to aid each vehicle's aero efficiency. The long tail spoilers for the S and X cost a cool $24.95. And no, that's not $24, it's $2,495. And those wider Ascension R front fenders for the Model 3, those are listed at $8,845. Unplugged Performance also claims the fenders, when used in collaboration with other Ascension R front-end parts, help with downforce. And I have to say, even though I'm not personally in the market for any of this stuff, I think this is pretty cool. I mean, this jogged my memory. I had to go look it up and confirmed. Koenigsegg's founder, Christian von Koenigsegg, has more than once spoken very kindly of Tesla in the past, and more than that, he hasn't just spoken kindly of them, he's walking the walk. Christian von Koenigsegg's daily driver is a Model 3. He told Road and Track a year or two ago, quote, "It's the best contemporary normal," in quotes, "daily driver around." So that's pretty cool of him to say that. So knowing that he daily drives a Tesla, it's not a huge surprise that they're doing this. Now, what's more fun about this story to me, I mean, the Koenigsegg thing is cool. I mean, that's awesome to see another automaker actually getting involved with Tesla in their own way. I think that's great. But for me, I just think it's so awesome for unplugged performance. Now, I don't know any of those guys personally. I've yet to have the pleasure of meeting any of them, but I'm certainly very familiar with them. I've only ever heard great things about them and about their products. And if that name sounds familiar, by the way, Unplugged Performance, it's because I've mentioned them on the podcast before as the folks who team up with our friend of the podcast, all-world driver Randy Post, who I've interviewed here, to do the Pikes Peak races every year. The most recent time I talked about it, the one they did last year, was, I guess it would have been in late June, right? Because it was right after the Plaid came out. They did Pikes Peak with a modified Model S Plaid and crushed it. Not the car, the track, the race course, just to clarify. But anyway, Unplugged Performance, I just think it's great. They're a small startup who, I mean, they started doing what they do because they love Tesla. And that's something that, somebody who's doing a Tesla podcast in his free time every single week, that's something I can very much relate to. And more to the fact here, this collaboration with Koenigsegg is not only going to bring Unplugged Performance more immediate business and probably future business as well, but I think it also very much legitimizes them as well. And that's not to say in any way that they weren't legitimate before, but it will only add to that in the industry. And I think it could even go so far as to position Unplugged Performance as a leader in what is inevitably going to be a very fast-growing aftermarket performance EV accessory space. No doubt. There's no doubt in my mind. So I don't know if any of the folks at Unplugged Performance listen to this podcast, but whether you do or not, I want to say right here, right now, congratulations to you guys. And that must have been a really fun phone call to have had when you secured that deal. I don't know if Christian von Koenigsegg was on the call himself or if it was other folks from the company, but that's still that. When the Unplugged Performance guys hung up the call on that one, that must have been a really good feeling and a really, really good day. So great stuff. And if you're looking to do a little performance-minded modification to your Tesla, check out Unplugged Performance and the Koenigsegg collab, as the kids say. Finally this week, Tesla Insurance has officially gone live in 2 more states, Arizona and Ohio, becoming the 4th and 5th states respectively to have access to the company's in-house coverage program. One more time from Tesla Roddy, who sums it up by saying, Tesla officially confirmed that its insurance program was officially active in Arizona and Ohio by adding the 2 states to the insurance webpage on its website. Arizona and Ohio officially joined California, Texas, and Illinois as the other states to offer the in-house program. And really, I have to say, I don't have much to add on this one, except if you are listening to me as an Arizona or Ohio resident, take a look on the website. Just have a look over there. I mean, it's worth doing a little comparison shopping. And although, just a quick pro tip for you when you do, make sure that you're comparing apples to apples. Because I experienced this myself when it first launched. It was available here in California first. I took a look at it. Double check your policy now, and when you go on the Tesla Insurance website to get a quote, make sure you're putting in all of the same coverage levels, all of the same deductibles on the Tesla Insurance site, again, because then you'll be getting an apples to apples quote. You'll really get a perfect comparison between what Tesla Insurance is offering you and what your current insurance company is offering you. And hopefully, Tesla Insurance will end up being a good option for some of you. All right, that is everything happening in the world of Tesla news this week, but stay with me. There's plenty of podcasts left because there are plenty of your excellent phone calls queued up and ready to go in the Ride the Lightning hotline coming up right after this. The second half of the podcast means it's time for the Ride the Lightning hotline. It is your chance to call in and be featured here on the podcast with your Tesla question, comment, or discussion topic. If you'd like to call in, there are two very easy ways you can do that. You can either use your smartphone's built-in voice recording software, record your question. Please try to keep it to 90 seconds or less so that I can get to as many people each week as possible. And then email that file to me at teslapodcast@gmail.com, or you can take that same 90-second or less call and just actually call in and leave a message on the Ride the Lightning hotline itself. It is a toll-free number that you can call anytime you like, and that number is 1-888-989-8752. Again, that's 1-888-989-TSLA. And if you know someone special with an upcoming birthday, anniversary, graduation, or some other special occasion, you can give them a unique gift of recorded voices from friends and family telling them why they're special. The recordings can be podcasted or put onto a keepsake. Visit lifeonrecord.com to learn more. Let me kick it off here with Patrick from North Carolina.
Hey Ryan, this is Patrick from North Carolina. I have a Model Y Performance on order. It's supposed to be delivered at really any time now in the next couple of weeks. One question I had, I'm thinking of doing the FSD beta using the FSD subscription model, but I was wondering, can I sign up for the beta before I sign up for the subscription so I'm not paying for the full self-driving until I get the beta acceptance, or do I have to have the subscription before I can request the beta? Thanks, love the podcast, and hope to get an answer. See ya.
Patrick, this is an excellent question, and I confess I don't 100% know the answer. To the best of my knowledge, I am pretty sure that you do have to have the FSD package in some form, either from buying it outright or monthly subscription, in order to even participate in the safety score program and potentially get the beta. I do understand the distinction you're asking about, though, which I realize isn't quite the same thing, but I do think you've got to have FSD actively on your account in order to make any go of it. I would be happy to be corrected on this by anybody out there listening if I'm not accurate on that, because of course I always want to be providing the most accurate information I can. Also, for what it's worth, as of this recording, very few people out there seem to be getting beta right now. It hasn't outright stopped. It did seem to have outright stopped for a couple of weeks. And from what I see in the community now, it's just more of a trickle than a steady flow of new people. I mentioned that just to set your expectations. In other words, to say that you're not guaranteed to get into the beta, even if you get your Model Y and get a sustained safety score of 99 or 100. But that could change at any moment. Perhaps even with 10.9 that's just been starting to roll out this week. Although as of the recording, I and a number of other of the FSD beta testers still have not received 10.9, so we'll see. But anyway, the point is not that. The point is to say that they could open the floodgates at any point, or just start admitting a good number of more people, whether that's with 10.9 or with the big beta 11 coming up soon. That could be a catalyst for Tesla to invite a bunch more people into the program. So just to set your mind there, set your expectations. I hope that helps, and congratulations on your imminent Model Y delivery. Next up is Darren from Roanoke.
Hey Ryan, this is Darren from Roanoke. I wanted to get confirmation from other Tesla owners that what's happening to my car is normal. This happens pretty often, but only when the battery is between 50 and 70% state of charge. It will jump up or jump down in the few hours it is left alone. So I'll park it with about 69%, then a few hours later it'll be 65%, and then a few hours after that, or maybe sometimes even the next day, it will jump back up, and I will have regained the 3 or 4% that I had quote-unquote lost before. This is without Sentry mode or HVAC running in 60 degree exterior temperature. I've tried many times going down to 10% and then charging it up to 90% to try to recalibrate the battery, but it still continues. I only ask because I've never seen anybody else talk about this on the forums or on the podcast, so I just wanted to make sure I'm not the only one. I've had my Model 3 for about 3.5 years now, so I assume that this is normal because it's been happening pretty much since I got the car. So maybe this is a good thing for new owners to be aware of. But anyway, thanks for your time and everything else. I appreciate it.
Darren, I also have not heard about this, and it definitely doesn't sound like desired behavior from the car, or, for that matter, normal behavior. And with your car at the age it is, situations, typically freeway. In short, I think it would probably look a lot like it does right now, but without the constant check-in to apply that slight turning force to the steering wheel. I'll tell you, I look forward to that day. That will be a nice step forward. That'll be make trips even better than they already are, road tripping in the Tesla. Thank you for taking the time to call in, Daniel. And next up, Jonathan from Atlanta.
Hey Ryan, Jonathan from Atlanta. Just letting you know, Colin, I also emailed one of the writers for Teslarati regarding this backup camera issue. The fact that they're stating there's no crashes related to the backup camera is kind of false. I've been having some intermittent camera issues for quite some time, thinking that it was just one of those bugs from an update, but noticed that when I opened and closed my trunk, the camera would cut off about halfway as I closed my trunk. And I get into my trunk quite often because I'm a home health physical therapist, so my treatment bag is in my trunk. So every time I go to a patient's house, I got to get my treatment bag out. So I'm one that opens the trunk and closes it quite frequently. But as a consequence, I was backing out of a parking space at Publix grocery store probably 3 weeks ago, and the camera glitched again, and I unfortunately backed into somebody. It was a car, and they ended up, it was a beat up pickup truck, and it was no big deal, but I did get into an accident because of the backup camera issue. So I reached out to Tesla, and they haven't gotten back with me yet. I've got a service appointment to replace the bumper. I was going to do it myself, but anyway, I'm just going to have them do it. Hopefully they won't charge me labor. But anyway, just hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you're one of those that tends to be real with Tesla, and I'm totally Tesla fanboy, own stock, everything, and I was happy for the recall as a Tesla owner and wanting to get the camera fixed. But anyway, just wanted to kind of give you all an update that there has been, unfortunately, at least with me, a crash that happened as a result of the glitchy camera. But anyway, keep up the good podcast, and I hope Tesla does right, continues to do right by their customers.
Jonathan, I am very sorry to hear this, and it sounds like your incident is pretty directly connected to the recall about this. Most importantly, I am glad you're okay, glad nobody is injured, and it sounds like it was relatively minor at the end of the thing, but still, it seemingly should not have happened if your backup camera was functioning properly. I hope you're able to get your car back, if indeed it's in the body shop right now. I hope you're able to get it back soon. Thank you very much for calling in to let me know about this, because again, we gotta, like I was talking about earlier in the podcast, it's important to take the good and the bad. We can be optimistic, we can be enthusiastic, but stuff like this is important to note as well, so that we can learn from it and Tesla can learn from it as well. Next caller is Fred from Plymouth, Minnesota.
Hi Ryan, greetings and wishes of good health to you and your family, including Daisy, in the coming year. This is Fred from Plymouth, Minnesota. Still waiting for my Model Y 2.0. First, I would like to say that coming from a cold climate, your criticisms of V11 are similar to my own. I have an idea that could change your prediction about the future of the Cyberquad. I wonder why Tesla would decide to build the ATV in-house. They do not build other Tesla toys in-house, and the Cyberquad is just a toy for big boys and big girls. I'm not sure how building the ATV in-house would help further the company's mission, and how it would be an efficient use of personnel and space. It just makes sense that Tesla would license the name, design, and specs to a dedicated ATV company. This would mean the ATV could come to market sooner, have greater sales potential, and more quickly reduce ATV pollution, both noise and CO2. It's just an idea. Thanks for all you do for the Tesla community.
Fred, thank you for the kind words, and I have to say, you make a great point that I had not considered with regard to the Cyberquad. I think you may very well be onto something there. It would make a lot of sense for Tesla to outsource that project to a company who does ATVs all day, every day, for all the good reasons that you mentioned. And by the way, I hope you end up being correct, so that even the earliest Cybertruck buyers can hopefully get themselves a matching Cyberquad to load into the bed of their truck if they desire one. So cheers to you. Thank you so much for your call. And I'll go next to Curtis from Colorado Springs.
Hi, Ryan. My name is Curtis from Colorado Springs, Colorado. Just got a quick updates here, or a bit of update, sorry. Comments on 4680 and your thoughts on which cars might get it for there. A comment I have is that the battery day update, I do remember there was a plan, there was a game plan, playbook, or whatever we want to call it, presented on the screen there that showed the 4680 specifically showing the M3 is not going to get that cell, and only the higher end items such as the Model Ys and above for it. That may not be exactly like that, but I do remember that it had a game plan of which vehicles in their current lineup were going to be receiving the 4680 for there. And next one I have is a comment I would have my own opinion on the Cybertruck pricing and release. Unfortunately, even though I do have a order for it, I am fairly bearish on it. I am afraid that my dual motor pricing is probably going to get to about 75, 80. Tri-motor is going to get higher than that, and then so on and so forth for it. And I currently don't believe any release is going to happen probably until 2023, like mid-2023 or late 2023, before I'm going to see anything, even though I have an early reservation on there. Also, as well, your comments on maybe the Fremont Model Y will shut down after the Austin gate speed, even if it's only just temporary for there. So, all right. Thank you very much.
All right, a lot of topics here, Curtis, so let's jump right in. Thank you for your call. With regard to the Model 3 having a different battery than the Model Y, it does make sense and it doesn't. On the one hand, they're fundamentally the same car, sharing the same platform, so it would be weird to me to leave the 3 on the 2170 cells. Then again, they're not going to be the same platform really once the Y switches to the single casting front and rear. So I don't know. I mean, it feels like Model 3 is in a kind of weird technology limbo, if indeed Tesla doesn't switch it over to the 4680 cells. We'll see what happens there. That was actually, I talked at the top of the show about the questions that I submitted to the say.com earnings call next week, that was one of the questions I asked, was about whether or not the Model 3 is planned to switch over to the new cell. So we'll see. And your comment on the Cybertruck, I have heard from a number of disappointed folks who share your same sentiment that they fear they might now be priced out of this truck. I mean, that would be a shame if that turns out to be the case. I mean, if I picture that happening to me with the Model 3 after I'd saved up for it and waited for it for so long, it would have crushed me. I mean, hashtag first world problems, right? Speaking relatively here. But it would have definitely been made me, really disappointed. So here's hoping that doesn't end up being the case for Cybertruck reservation holders. And finally, you are right about Fremont. It's going to have to stop down and pause to retool the Model Y lines there after Texas spins up. The question is when. I mean, Elon has said that the full ramp up of production for Texas and Berlin as well, we're talking about Texas here, the full ramp up might take a year. So I do wonder when Tesla will just rip that Band-Aid off with Fremont and get them converted over to the 4680s. Will they bite the bullet and go ahead and pause that Fremont line for a couple weeks sooner rather than later so that both Fremont and Texas are spitting out Model Y 2.0s and thus anybody in the United States who orders a Model Y is going to get the same Model Y that anybody else gets? Or will Tesla just stick with the 2170 cells in Fremont for the foreseeable future as the Model Y wait times for ordering and delivering continue to get longer as demand keeps growing? I mean, it's a good problem to have if you're Tesla, but it is a problem nevertheless. I am eager to see which solution they choose to go after. If we're lucky, we'll hear more about this on the earnings call and the product roadmap update on next week's episode. Next up is Michael from Millbrae has his own additional predictions on top of mine for 2022.
Hey Ryan, Michael from Millbrae. I love your annual predictions show, but I was wondering if you might consider untethering yourself from the Sexy Cars framework. There's a few things that it seems would be nice to get predictions on that don't quite fit, such as the new model. Might we see something new this year? Maybe an update on the Tesla bot. What about Fsd Progress or Hardware 4? Any other new software features that we might see this year? Other stuff that are probably a little bit less interesting for you would be Powerwall 3, solar improvements, annual production, tax credit. And it would be cool to see an additional set of predictions that you could go back and look at every year. Just a thought. All right, take care. Bye.
Michael, you're right. This was probably the last year for that format. I'm going to have to add in some more stuff for next time. But, at least I did sneak in that bonus Gigafactory prediction at least. We'll see if I end up being right about that one. Thank you, as always, for your calls. And let's see, next up is Cecil in Miami.
Hey, Ryan. Been with you since like the third episode. Cecil here in Miami. Got that new update for Christmas. Very nice. Lots of cute toys. The blind spot monitoring, definitely a big plus. But still one major thing left out from all these updates. I've had a Tesla Model 3 since May of 2018, and I still cannot see any telematics on any of the sentient mode recordings. Would be really great for showing up to court, being victim of police abuse a couple of times, and I have the video, but it doesn't say date, no time, no speed, no GPS coordinates. That's a big glaring omission that is in $99 webcams. Still wanting to find out where that is. What do you think? Are we ever going to get that? Sorry if I ran over the 90 seconds. Bye.
Cecil, great to hear from you, and thank you for listening to the podcast for all these years. I couldn't possibly agree with your call more. Blackview and other dash cams include the things you're talking about. A timestamp, the location, the speed of the car, etc. And it can be really helpful. I mean, I suppose the timestamp is the only thing that's currently there, but theoretically, it's totally possible, I would think, that everything else that you mentioned could be added to it as well. I mean, we know that Sentry Mode was basically a hack. I mean, it wasn't part of the original design of any of the 4 Tesla vehicles. It was added later after the camera system, the surround camera system was. And it's great to have, don't get me wrong, but I agree that it would help a lot of people out if Tesla could add that additional information onto those recordings. Here's hoping that the right folks at the company might hear your call here on the podcast, and hopefully my ringing endorsement for whatever that may or may not be worth would help as well. Safe travels to you. Brian from Northern Virginia is up next. Go ahead, Brian.
Thanks, Ryan. This is Brian from Northern Virginia with a very timely question, issue for discussion perhaps on the show. This past week we had a major snowstorm and a significant portion of I-95 up the East Coast from roughly Richmond up to the D.C. border, Fredericksburg anyway, to the D.C. border was totally locked in the traffic jam for 27 hours. People were trapped on the highway in the snow, unable to move anywhere. People ran out of gas, ran out of food, etc. You can imagine 27 hours stuck in, and it was cold, it was snowing, and so forth. My question is, there had to be some Teslas in there because we have a lot of Teslas in this part of the world. So I'm wondering, how do you economize when you're stuck in a situation like that? Can you run the heater consistently the whole time? We have a powerful battery there, and if we're not driving, that battery will last a long time. But what's the answer? How do people survive a situation like that? Obviously, it depends some on what your charge state was when you got caught in the traffic jam. But anyway, I'd be interested to know. Some people in Tesla Motors Club are suggesting that you lose perhaps 1 mile per hour or as much as 2 or 3 miles per hour by running the heat in cold weather when you're not driving. Look forward to your discussion of this subject, Brian.
Brian, thank you for your call. The first thing I was going to say was one of the last things that you ended up mentioning, that the duration of your Tesla's state of operation is heavily dependent on your state of charge. Hopefully, in winter weather along an interstate, most of the affected Tesla drivers started their trip with a high state of charge. But if there's a supercharger somewhat near where that shutdown happened, it's certainly possible that there were Tesla drivers in that traffic jam that were at a fairly low battery level trying to get to that supercharger. To answer your primary question though, camp mode would be what you'd want to use, and that uses about 1% of juice per hour. I mean, maybe you could prolong that if you switch back and forth between the heater and just using the seat heaters for a little while, because the seat heaters, I'm pretty sure, tax the HVAC system less than the full and proper heating system itself does. I hope everybody stays safe out there this winter. That's really the bottom line. One more call this week. It comes from a regular caller, Damon from Northbrook, Illinois. Go ahead, Damon.
Hey Ryan, this is Damon out of Northbrook, Illinois here. Just wanting to talk about FSD beta and something I've seen on YouTube that's a little concerning. Specifically, a lot of channels show people really pushing FSD to its limits, which, I mean, they let the car do as much driving as possible within a very narrow safety margin. They intervene when there's safety issues, but a lot of times, like, the drivers just kind of let the cars, meander all over the road and, get really close to objects that they shouldn't, or pause in weird ways in traffic and just wait to see what the car will do. But essentially what they're doing is they're telling the car, hey, this behavior is okay. I'm not intervening, so it's fine. And I'm concerned that other people will watch those videos and think that's the appropriate behavior to train the algorithm, but it really isn't. It just delays development. So as a PSA, just if you're driving FSD, just intervene anytime that the car feels uncomfortable. put in that steering input when it's kind of wandering in its lane, or pull up closer to the intersection when it's hanging back too far for the cameras to see safely. And hopefully that moves this whole process along faster. So anyhow, as always, love the podcast. Really appreciate all the hard work you're putting in. And best regards. Bye.
Thank you, Damon, and well said. Good words for anybody that may enter the program in the coming weeks. I'd also add that it's good to take snapshots of your driving using that camera button at the top of the UI on the FSD beta. That little camera icon doesn't show up on the regular production software, but if you've got the FSD beta, it's up there for that purpose. Because what it does is it sends a clip to Tesla for them to hopefully, if not manually by human eyes, if at least looked at in a machine learning way, for Tesla to look at and learn from. But you're right, intervening teaches it as the car, because it logs every single disengagement, and Tesla's able to use that data to help figure out where to focus their training efforts. Thank you very much. Time for your pro tip of the week. It comes from Peter in South Wales in the UK.
Hi Ryan, it's Peter. My tip is for those people who shop at Costco and have a Model 3. Now, if you shop at Costco, you generally get the toilet rolls and find that it's difficult to stash these in the car somewhere. But I've found that if you open the frunk and put the rolls in there, they fit almost perfectly. Hope you find this useful. Thanks, bye.
That's a good one, Peter. In fact, it's particularly relevant for me because I need to go to Costco, and toilet paper is one of the things on my shopping list for this weekend. I would say, just personally, I make probably quarterly runs to Costco, and I'll have to try that tip of yours the next time that I make a trip, whether it ends up being this weekend or not. So thank you very much for that, and thanks to anybody that does take the time to send in a pro tip of the week. I love this segment of the podcast. I hear from some listeners that enjoy it as well. We all get to learn something. So if you've got a pro tip of the week that you'd like to share with me and your fellow Ride the Lightning listeners, you can call in and share it. And you call in the same way that you send in a regular Ride the Lightning hotline call, using either my email address or the Ride the Lightning hotline dial-in number. Before I go, let me mention some friends of the podcast. Starting with AbstractOcean.com, purveyors of so many fine Tesla aftermarket accessories, whether it's the rear footwell lighting kit, the drop-in cup holder stabilizer, the vinyl wrap kits for your center console, if you've got one of the old glossy ones, whether it's the new 4th generation tempered glass screen protector, etc., etc., etc. They have a lot of stuff for all 4 Tesla models. Just go browse around, take a look. Trust me, you will not regret the few minutes you spend poking around that site. AbstractOcean.com. And if you've decided to buy anything, pile all your stuff into that shopping cart and use the coupon code, it's all one word here, RTL Podcast. Use that coupon code at checkout to get 15% off of your first order. Thanks to Abstract Ocean for continuing to offer my audience. Next up, the snap plate. The front license plate for people like me that hate having to have a front license plate. It snaps on and off in seconds, but when it snaps on securely. It won't mess with the paint, with the grille, with the radiator, with the autopilot sensors. Nothing. It is just a nice, clean, minimalist design, blends nicely with the Tesla front end, and leaves nothing behind when it's removed. You can take it off for car shows. You can take it off when you're washing the car. You can put it back on at parking meters, put it back on if you're going to be going on a toll road or a bridge or something. So get yours again for all 4 Teslas. The URL is everyamp.com/RTL. Don't forget that /RTL. Everyamp, EVERYAMP.com/RTL. And then there's a new friend of the podcast here. I started mentioning this one last week. Budget Safe Solar. If you are considering solar for your home or business, yes, of course, you're going to consider Tesla Energy, Tesla Solar. But why not reach out to Budget Safe Solar as well? Friend of the podcast, their deal is simple. So they take the time to understand your specific situation. That's the goal. Think of them kind of like real estate agents, but for your solar needs. They're going to help you find the best option for you. They are independent consultants, so they've got a lot of solutions to help everybody. They operate in all 50 states plus Puerto Rico, so odds are they're probably going to be able to help you out. And by the way, you can contact them if you're interested in joining the growing solar industry as well. Learn more and or reach out at their website. It's budgetsafesolar.com, referral code RTL. Don't forget that if you do end up dropping them a line and reaching out about doing some business. How about Immaculate Reflections? If you and your car are in or going to be in the San Francisco Bay Area, why not treat both of you? Treat you via your car and treat your car to a spa day, as I have done with Immaculate Reflections. Just a fantastic detailer. Jeff is just wonderful, the owner and proprietor there, and it's just simple. You just go to the website, irdetailing.com, drop Jeff a line, mention that you're a listener of the podcast, and whether you want to do ceramic coating and thus not have to wax the car for the next few years, whether you want to do paint correction, whether you want to do paint protection film, or some combination thereof, mention that you're a listener of the podcast, and there is a discount on that service waiting for you. So that's pretty cool. Again, irdetailing.com. If you want to take a look at some examples of Jeff's work, you can see them on his Yelp page, which is yelp.com/Immaculate Reflections, and or his Instagram, where his handle is Immaculate_Reflections. There's probably a picture of my car on there. I actually don't even know. Next is Pure Tesla. Don't forget to go to puretesla.com/RTL if you need to take care of your dash cam and Sentry mode situation. If you're not already squared away in that department, they have a 128 gigabyte micro SD based kit for $49, shipped free anywhere in the US. That's a pretty good deal for, again, it's micro SD based, so it's just going to be bulletproof, super reliable for many years to come, unlike USB flash memory, which just is not designed to hold up to that constant reading and writing that the dash cam and Sentry mode are doing. So get your kit at puretesla.com/RTL. They also have the nice sort of slim Super Nintendo inspired wireless game controller kit for your Tesla as well. If you do some serious gaming in the car, whether you're like waiting to pick your kids up at school every day, or you're at Superchargers a lot, whatever the case may be, don't miss that on the puretesla.com/RTL website as well. Jada, they've got a bunch of great stuff. The Jada USB Hub console, which has a storage organizer, USB hub, Apple Watch charger, and AirPod charger all in one. Whether you want to get the Jada Tray, which is a tech-focused center console organizer that just drops right in, fits perfectly. I've got one in my car. Or they've got an SSD drive if you want to do that for your dash cam needs. They also, for those of us with older Model 3s that don't have the wireless charging pad built in for charging the cell phones, they've got the version 4 of their wireless charging pad, which I love. I've got version 3, version 4 is even better. So I've got a coupon code for this. For any of the stuff you're going to buy, coupon code RTL. Very simple there. In return, all I ask is that you, if you are going to buy anything, please do so through my referral link, which is getjada.com/ref/8. That's Jada spelled Jeda. And finally, if you are not already following/subscribing to the podcast, that is free on all the major podcast services, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and Spotify, which are both natively in your Tesla. And then I'm also on YouTube in audio only, of course. But if you do want to listen there, just search Ride the Lightning Tesla on YouTube. You'll find my channel, subscribe, boom, done. Again, you can email me, teslapodcast@gmail.com. And then my Twitter and Instagram handle, if you care to follow me there, is DMC_Ryan on either of those social media platforms. And finally, the Patreon. That is, as I mentioned at this point of the show, this is the way you can support the podcast if you feel so inclined, and I hope you will at some point. Maybe 2022 is the year, flip into a new year, and you think, you know what, Ryan, I've been listening to you for a while, I like the podcast, I listen every week, I'm going to support it. You can do that on my Patreon page, which is found at patreon.com/Tesla Podcast. Patreon spelled Patreon. The support tiers start at $5 a month. That's what I call the sport tier. They're all named after acceleration modes in Teslas. $5 a month for the sport tier, or you can, for any of them, you can do an annual subscription, an annual pledge, I should say, not subscription, annual pledge, if you just want to pay once and be done with it. If you do pay once for the whole year, you get a 5% discount, so that's kind of hopefully a nice little incentive on that. The next tier up is the Ludicrous Tier. That gets you early access from that $5 tier and access to the bonus episode every month as well. And it just keeps going. It goes on up. There are a few more tiers after that. So I would humbly request that at some point, take a look at that page. Just have a look, see if any of that appeals to you, that you might want to support me at some point. Patreon.com/Tesla Podcast. And that brings me to the part where I thank the high-level Patreon supporters, the Plaid, Maximum Plaid, and Roadster in Space tier backers. I'll start with the Plaid crew. Thank you so much to George Cassiopo, David Brander, Logan Willis, Jason Chalukas, Tim Hyde, Peter Chalet, Eric Randolph, David Nandal, Dory and Steve Guberman, Jeremy, the Tesla owners of Taiwan, Ron Lee, Charlie Gillespie, David Perella, Sunil Joseph, Dennis Peak, Jeff Angwin, Chase Cabanillas, the Lydia family, Aaron Altschul, Jarrett Brown, Jerome Strack, Jamie Dalton, Noel and Lucy Murphy, the Tesla Owners East Bay Club, Paul Casarino, Ryan Natchett, Mike and Barbara from Louisville, David J. Howes, Travis Krenzel, Matt Nixon, the Tesla Owners Club of Wisconsin, Jonathan Zalesny, Rick Dean, not Elon Musk, in quotes, and T. Kirk Lowry. Thanks to all of you. And on the Maximum Plaid side, thank you to the newest Maximum Plaid tier backer who sent me a very kind note as well. Kim Bay. Kim, thank you so much for your Maximum Plaid generosity, alongside the other very generous Maximum Plaid backers, Jonathan Wales, Cameron Clark, Daniel Grummer, Seth.
And it's a new episode of the Electrek podcast. I am Fred Nebert, your host, and as usual, I'm joined by Seth Wintrow. How you doing this week, Seth?
I'm good.
All right, let's jump right in. Yeah, it's kind of a slow news week this week, but we still have a few bits and pieces of information that are worth discussing. And then as usual, we're gonna get to your comments and questions, so make sure to put them in the comment section right now, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, or wherever you're watching live. If you can put question in all caps before a question or a specific subject you want us to discuss, that would be appreciated. Makes it easier to sparse through your comments. All right, let's start in with a little exclusive we had this week. We found out we uncovered a new trademark that Tesla filed. So these don't happen too often. Tesla, every now and again, they either file a new trademark for like something like Mega Pack, for example, or they use their current trademarks like Tesla and the Tesla logo, and they expand the use of it to new categories, and those new categories can tell you, oh, Tesla is looking to expand in a different product. And in this case here, we're talking about a product with audio equipment. So I'm going to read the full category because it's kind of a wide-ranging category. It's called microphones, headphones, earphones, digital audio players, sound transmitting apparatus, audio speakers, subwoofer, earpads for earphones, audio interfaces, audio equalizer apparatus, horns for loudspeakers, and megaphones. So it could be literally any of those. Now the big question is, of course, like Tesla has some speakers in its cars, some audio transmitting apparatus in its cars. So it could be literally just that. However, if it's just that, I don't know why Tesla would need to apply for a trademark for those, because those are just used internally. So Tesla is not trying to sell them, it's not marketing them. Maybe they need it just to brand them, because of course speakers inside cars are either not branded or branded of a supplier. Like if you go like to a premium Audi or something, you're gonna have a Bang & Olufsen on it. So they have the trademark for that. Audi can use it inside its cars, but for Tesla, using its own speaker in its own cars, I don't know if that would be the goal here. So there is a chance, I don't want to put a percentage chance on it, but there is a chance that it's to make one of those products that I just listed, whether it would be headphones or whether it would be speakers. Again, not just for vehicles, I mean like speakers like for your house or something. Possibility, like it's definitely not something that works with Tesla's mission to accelerate the advent of electric transport and renewable energy, but we've seen Tesla have a real focus with music in the past. I don't know, I'm sure you remember when Tesla was talking about making its own music streaming service.
Yeah, I was just gonna bring that up. There's definitely a big interest there from Tesla.
A big interest, and there was also some development on that front. Tesla had developed some interfaces to put inside its vehicles and its Tesla app. We reported on that back in 2017 when some of the code leaked. But of course, that was in 2013, and nothing came to it over the last few years. But Tesla has put a big focus for the audio experience inside its vehicles since. I remember back when the Model 3 came out, and the audio system in the vehicle was very well received, especially by audiophiles, people that are really into that stuff. And Elon mentioned that Tesla has a lot of audio engineers from Bang & Olufsen, because a lot of people, a lot of audiophiles was like, hey, this is a system similar to what is a $10,000 upgrade in some premium vehicles, but this is included in back then it was a $40,000 car, now it's a $45,000 car. So people were really happy about that, and Elon said, yeah, that Tesla's audio engineers are coming from Bang & Olufsen and some other companies too, and the system is highly programmable, and it's going to keep improving with new over-the-air codecs updates. So something to keep an eye on. While I was researching the whole thing, I also did a quick research into Tesla's audio teams, and sure, the lead audio engineer at Tesla, Marcus Koch, is spent over a decade at both Harman, which is well known as audio suppliers for automakers, also some consumer products, I assume, and Bang & Olufsen. I keep saying that name, and I feel like I'm losing it every time. Yeah. And but more recently, they hired a bunch of people, like a bunch from both companies, from Jawbone, another well-known speaker company, and Amazon Lab 126, who's have a big audio team for the echo speakers that they do. And we know that Tesla is this is a thing that Elon has signaled quite a few times, where Tesla wants to improve the not just the audio on the sounds part, but also on the microphone part, and getting the audio to what's the word I'm looking for? To talk to the car, like I'm losing my words.
You're talking about the microphone? Or?
The voice commands. Voice commands. Like voice commands is like Elon has been saying that any input is an error, basically, and so the car, for the most part, should just know already what you want to do and do it. But other than that, like we know Tesla is not big on buttons and like that. There's a touch screen, there's a force touch buttons on the steering wheel, but for the most part, the car should already know, and if it doesn't know, you should be able to just tell it. But we know that that's not always ideal. Like in English, it works very well, but if a guy like me that has an accent in English, it's already a problem. The French version is not also perfect either. Of course, Tesla does not spend more time on the English version. But
is there two French versions, a Quebec version and a France version? Version?
Yes. I mean, I don't know for the voice commands if it makes a difference, but I know for like there's a French Canadian version of the controls inside the car, and there's one in France, because the one in France was available way before they made the French Canadian version for Canada.
Right.
They adapted it, but of course it's extremely similar anyway. So I don't know for the voice command if they can take into account the different accent, because a lot of the services does. Like if you go like Google Assistant, you go to Siri, you go to those services, they make the difference between a French accent, French Canadian. Also, even if you use it in English and you have an accent in English, it will adapt to your way of speaking and improve from that. So Tesla has a lot of work to do on that front to make the voice command good. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I really don't know. It could be something completely related to their vehicles, or it could be a brand new consumer product where like Tesla believes has the best audio experience inside the car, and they think they can replicate that in speakers for your home. I truly don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked in the past about how like Tesla's, like if you think about big consumer operating systems, Tesla now has 1 million cars on the road, so they've gotten 1 million users of their OS. They could theoretically, rip that tablet right off the dashboard and turn it into a consumer operating system. I don't know if I would pick that over an iPad necessarily, but they're kind of most of the way there. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. It might also be for like one of their silly tequila products or whistles or whatever.
Yeah, that's a real possibility too, because we know Tesla's merch store like the high gross margin products.
Right.
And if there ever was a high gross margin product, that's headphones. So it would make sense that those ends up on the merch store at some point. All right, we're gonna shift to something a little bit more serious. One of the big milestones we're expecting from Tesla this year is the start of Model Y production at Gigafactory Texas. This week, a bunch of brand new Model Y were spotted at the charging station at the Tesla Gigafactory Texas. So the speculation is that they were made there. To which degree, we don't know. But this morning, we just had a nice little exclusive where reliable sources familiar with the matter gave us a little bit more insight into the current goals to not only achieve production at the Gigafactory Texas, but to have the first cars ready for deliveries from Gigafactory Texas. And what we are hearing right now from serious sources is that Tesla is aiming to deliver the first few Model Y built at Gigafactory Texas towards the end of the quarter, so mid to end of March. But we are talking about a relatively low volume of production here, so it's going to be the first few cars being delivered. So the cars that we've been seeing over the last few weeks, the Model Y bodies and the full vehicles now that we're charging and everything, those are apparently test runs for the production lines. One source just also told me that Tesla is significantly ramping up the hiring of a production associate at Gigafactory Texas. So that's normally a good sign that Tesla is moving to preparing for to move towards volume production, because those production associates is the number one position at the factory floor. That they are the workers, they are the people that get things done. And when you achieve volume production, you need a lot of them. So for the beginning of production, you need a lot fewer of them. You got a lot more engineers and people like working on the robots and smoothing out the production line. And then when things ramp up, you need those workers to just move things around and get things done. So yeah, right now it's still a few months behind the schedule. Of course, Tesla has often mentioned by the end of 2021. Since the end of 2021 has come, they haven't really updated the timeline. We expect next week to have an update on that with the earnings, and Elon saying that there's going to be a product roadmap update during the earnings. So the Model Y at both Texas and Giffords Berlin are expected to be among those product update roadmap timeline updates, I should say. But now we're looking at end of March for the first few Model Ys. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be a way yet for customers who have Model Ys on order right now to know whether or not their Model Y is going to come from Gigafactory Texas or Fremont factory. Of course, the significance of that is whether you're going to get the new version of the Model Y with a structural battery pack or not. It doesn't change that much on the consumer front, but we do expect some things to be updated in terms of range and maybe even longevity of the battery pack, maybe even charge rate of the battery pack. So there's quite a few things that could change there. Of course, we won't have the details until the vehicle launch. Tesla doesn't like to do that, because if it is better, you just created yourself a whole lot of headaches, because we know Tesla has quite a backlog on the Model Y, so a lot of people are going to try to weasel their way into trying to make sure they get the Gigafactory one and not the Fremont one. So
if you were a Model Y buyer, would you want one of the first ones off the
That's a good point. That's a good point. So there is a trade-off maybe in terms of the quality.
But you want that one unibody, not unibody, but
it's a good question. It's a fair question. I don't know which one I would go with. So maybe they're going to be fine because of that. Maybe they just, all right, I'm going to go with the proven version of Fremont Factory that's been going well for a few years now, except instead of the new ones. But I think, especially if you are like a second-time buyer, some of like the Tesla fans that they're not on their first Tesla, they're going to want the latest product. Of course, and also if there are issues with them, like you're still on warranty, this is going to fix them, and then your idea is that you can maybe go through some early pains in order to get the better version of the car long term. I don't know. I don't know what people think these days when it comes to this. Like it's a trade-off. All right, last week we spent a lot of times discussing the heat pump issue in the cold weather that's happening right now throughout the US and Canada and some parts of Europe too, that are getting some record cold weather. I know this week was particularly rough, so we used the news item as kind of a warning to be careful out there. But so we were discussing whether it would be a software issue, whether it would be a hardware issue, and if what we're hearing for customers that are having to replace the manifold and the octovalve and heat pump system, that maybe the hardware issue is due to a prolonged software issue that, if unaddressed, leads to breaking the hardware. It's unclear, but if you're listening to Tesla or Elon Musk in particular, because that announcement came from Elon, is that there is a software fix to it. So this week, Elon said that it was a high priority issue at Tesla, and this weekend the automaker started rolling out a new software, which I'm quoting Elon here. Firmware fix to recalibrate heat pump expansion valve is rolling out now. So we were talking about the air intake. We were calling it the flap at that point, but I assume that's what he's calling it, talking about the valve. If there would be some ice buildup there that would trigger a problem with the valve, which would then shut down the heat pump. Now, I don't know, recalibrate the valve expansion, if that solved the problem in the first place, so it won't exacerbate the problem if there is a ice buildup. The issue is still not clear. But Tesla is addressing it with a software update right now, but if anyone has been experiencing this issue and they get the software update, we would appreciate your feedback, whether it has a good impact or not. But we have seen plenty of reports from owners where they have to change their whole heat pump to actual. Might play a role in AGI, given that it trains against the outside world, especially with the advent of Optimus. Optimus is the nickname, or Optimus Subprime is the nickname that Elon gave to the Tesla bot project. So this is a step. Again, you need to approach this in a way like to an analysis of Elon's communication on Twitter. So he's still being careful, like might play a role. This is still vague, but you need to take it within the context of him kind of just slowly but surely introducing this idea that Tesla is not an automaker or even a tech company. It's an AI and robot company, and all the cars on the road are just robots on wheels. And Elon has said multiple times too that Tesla has the best AI team out there. And the whole Tesla AI day last year was about recruiting artificial intelligence researcher and scientists. So, and apparently they've been successful with that. Tesla shared earlier last month. They shared this the application that they had from their AI team after AI Day, and indeed it blew up. So it's interesting on that front, and not just, of course, like to me it looked like Tesla Bot was just kind of a way to get people in the door. Like, this is super exciting. Yeah, a recruiting tool. Yeah, it gets exciting. Like, oh, I can clearly get to work on the humanoid robot. This is awesome. But then you end up accepting the position at Tesla, and then you end up working mostly on self-driving and everything, and then like maybe you get a tiny percentage of your time on the Tesla Bot project. But slowly but surely, it looks like Tesla is indeed putting some more attention on the Tesla Bot, and the more, like, you cannot just put the Tesla self-driving AI into a Tesla bot and expect it to be useful. Like, maybe you can navigate around and not bump into things too much, but and that's probably the future, because right now it would probably be hitting the door corners and whatnot. But for the most part, it would just navigate the world around it. It would be able to understand information that you gave it. It will be able to act on that information smartly under than getting to a location, like, because that's what the Tesla robot on wheel does. You give it a point in a map, and it's gonna try to get there trying to follow the rules of the road as best as it can. And we know that it's not doing it perfectly. It's doing it quite impressively in some cases, but there's still quite a lot of weaknesses. So putting that into a robot, I don't know. I mean, in some ways, there's fewer roads to a pedestrian, especially within a private area, like walking around your house. But at the same time, like one of the rules needs to be don't walk over the kids, don't walk over the dogs, don't walk over, like don't kill anything. Yeah, don't kill anything, don't break anything. So it's a complex issue. But at the same time, Elon has some good point. Like they have the Dojo project, which has an incredible capacity to train neural nets, and it's going to be the similar thing. It's going to be training neural nets for a different environment. Like Elon said in the tweet, it's training against the outside world, which that's a fair point. That's what Tesla vehicles are doing. It's what Tesla Bot's going to have to do.
I mean, AGI though, like general intelligence, artificial general intelligence, is like kind of the holy grail. I feel like maybe it's too late. Like, if somebody gets to AGI, whether it's Google or Tesla or somebody we don't know about, that's basically at the point where the artificial intelligence can start getting itself smarter. Like it's kind of like the runaway. Like that's,
it's not in our hands anymore.
Right, we're done.
Yeah.
For better or worse. So
because the evangelists said that will solve all the world's problem, and the other says that or it's just gonna do whatever the hell it wants, and we are not. They won't give us a second thought.
Right. I mean, maybe we are the world's problem. So maybe the robot's like, well, yeah, I can fix it real quick. Anyway, I feel like that's kind of light. Like, maybe Tesla will fix, whatever. I don't know. It just feels like he took that, this big like idea and kind of made light of it. And
I think the idea is like it's not it. Some people think like you can just like one person can like solve AGI and just make it happen, like as if we can just write a few lines of code and solve intelligence. I think it's gonna happen over time with a lot of smaller incremental implementation of artificial intelligence, like the Tesla self-driving vehicle, like the Tesla bot. So Elon sees it, like probably Elon is starting to see, even though he's been wrong 1,000 times about that, and there was a very funny video about that came out this week about when he can solve computer vision for self-driving. But yeah, he feels like he's probably very close to it. So it's like, all right, if I'm very close to solving that, maybe, and if we get very close to solving just intelligence adoption for a humanoid robot, then we can transport that, we can translate that into AGI. So I don't know, that's probably how I see the project right now. But I mean, it generated a lot of headlines about the end of the world and whatnot. I mean, in response to his comments, one of the tweets said, bring out the scenario that, they're so glad that Tesla is doing that because Tesla is a responsible company and they will do it the right way and not bring out the end of the world, or summoning the demon, like Elon likes to say about AGI. And Elon responded that we'll do our best, which is, that's reassuring. Thank you, Elon. But then he said, decentralized control of robots will be critical. So this is to avoid some kind of Terminator-like scenario where artificial intelligence just takes over and control all the robots, and the robots turn against, the AI used the robot to turn against the humans. I remember even, I don't know if it was at SpaceX or Tesla, but they named their server rooms, and they had one server room that was called Skynet, which is of course the company that develops the AI in Terminator. I think Elon said that they changed the name of the room, like just because they thought it was too on the nose.
Right. At one point it was funny, and then they were like, "Yeah, this is not good. This is not funny anymore."
Yeah, when they started getting too much into AI, they were like, "Oh, maybe not. Don't push it like that." Because